Well, welcome to the Living Well podcast produced by Elim Christian Centre. It is awesome to have you with us today. My name's Mike Griffiths. I'm one of the pastors here and a counsellor as well. And today we are going to be talking about the huge topic of grief. Now, I've got a couple of special guests with us today I'd like to introduce. First one is Lynley McCabe. Lynley has been a nurse for many years, and she's also an experienced counsellor, and it's awesome to have Lynley with us today. She brings a wealth of clinical insight, which is going to be helpful for us, as well as lots of personal experience, which is awesome. And of course, we have Bob Lawson, which is great. Pastor Bob, church planner, senior pastor of many years, served for around about a decade as our national leader of Elim, New Zealand, a complete statesman, and also a man who has walked through loss in various forms. And so, guys, it's so good to have you both with us here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, let's jump into this. We talk at times, don't we, that we talk about grief. We don't always necessarily connect it with actually that grief comes from loss, like any loss. Yeah. You experience any loss and there's going to be grief, right? Bob, why don't you kick off? Tell us some of the loss stuff that you've experienced over a lifetime. And you were telling us before about the real pain of losing money at the races.
Well, yeah, that was a long time ago, but the memory stuck. And the biggest pain of that was I had to go home and face the music about that. But I got cured of losing money at the races.
Thank you, Jesus.
So thankfully. But I've had some losses, obviously my parents and some of my siblings. And through church, lots of people had to deal with suicide with just a 12-year-old boy that was really, really hard to face. And the other losses, I remember one of the churches that we'd pioneered, and after another pastor came in and then the second pastor after him, the church was closed down. And, that was quite a thing to go through after putting years into people's lives to see that happen. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, right? Losing that, because most people wouldn't necessarily think that a church closing down is necessarily going to cause grief. What was that? And obviously, we're going to get down further to you losing your wife, lovely Maggie, of course. But let's just pause here. What was it like having this church that you had planted, built up, handed over, and entrusted, and then it kind of ended? What was that like?
Well, it was a mixture of things because the person coming in after me was quite different to me. So there was a difference of opinion about all sorts of things, and I wasn't necessarily right in my summing up of the situation, but I wasn't surprised in the end that it happened because, of the type of personality that the two pastors were. But it was really hard. I guess the comforting thing is that most of those people just fitted into other churches. And the ones that we were close to, we've kept good relations with, for many years. And but yeah, it's one of those things that you go through and you can't do anything about. You just got to sit on the sidelines, process it.
Very good. Okay, we're gonna talk a bit about losing Maggie a little bit later, but Lynley, you have been a nurse for many years, and you were mentioning just before this that you worked in palliative care for a period of that. Yes. I guess nurses face death far more than your average punter.
Yes.
What was it like as a nurse learning to deal with death?
Well, I think it's been quite a process, actually. It's not like you just suddenly, I can handle this now. I can work around this and be okay. So in my early 20s, I was in a medical ward and there were terminally ill people there who we cared for and cared for their families as well. And so just being in and around that all the time, experiencing that, learning to be okay in it. I think that death and dying can be really quite frightening for people, especially if you haven't been around it, and we're not so much in our society. We sort of put it over there. And so when people have their first experiences around death and loss and dying, it's quite frightening for people. And so as a nurse, I had to experience that as well. I mean, I hadn't had people close to me die until I started nursing. But becoming comfortable, becoming comfortable with my own feelings of discomfort about being around that, and having to sit with that myself, that I can't fix this, I can't change this, as much as I would love to. I can't. But I actually, what I can do is I can be there with somebody. So I learned other ways of being maybe helpful, and that is like the comfort that a nurse can bring just with her presence, their 100%. Presence without words is actually really powerful, and any one of us can do that in any setting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, like interesting, the whole concept of death, like it's the number one fear, right? Like,
yes.
What was that like as a young nurse? Like
frightening.
How old, frightening?
Yeah, in all honesty, I mean, I grew up on a farm, so, cycle of life, that's all right. But in and around people when they're high emotion, these are like their darkest moments of their lives. And as a young nurse, yes, that was frightening for me. I realised at one point, that had quite an impact on me. And it wasn't till I was talking to someone a little while later, and they said to me, they were just encouraging me that actually at the end of my life, something that brought me comfort was at the end of my life, Jesus will never be closer to me than in that moment when I take my last breath. And for me, that was helpful. But again, just continually being around death and loss, and being comfortable with it.
You do get comfortable with it? Like how do you, what is it like for you now if you're sitting with a person who is about to imminently die? What's that experience for you? Is that a positive experience?
For me, it's really profound. If I could even say it's like holy ground.
Wonderful.
Because when I am in that, I feel so close to the presence of God. Like I feel his heart.
Wow.
And there is something about when you like slowing down and waiting with someone as they are dying. That's actually really sacred. That's really special. And I think we rush through life so much, and we don't have spaces like that. We don't make spaces for that. And as painful as that is for people, it's also an incredibly special time.
Wow. Wonderful.
Like actually things almost become clearer. Okay. There's a clarity that comes because suddenly I realise what's important in life and I don't need to worry about that stuff. So it sort of almost brings this clarity to my life. That's what it did.
I love what you said about that thing you were told that Jesus is never closer than in your dying moment. And it reminds me of scripture in John 14 when Jesus is about to go to his death and he's having this conversation with the disciples, and they're trying to work out what's going on, but they're slowly picking up that Jesus is going to be he's going to die, and they're really distressed about this. And Jesus makes this ridiculously fascinating statement. He says, "And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you with me, that you also may be where I am." It's like when you dig into that, it's like, this is not a generic end times, I'm going to come back. This is when you die, I will come and get you.
Yes.
And I will, that's a personal promise. And boy, that just brings me so much comfort. I think that's amazing. I guess there's plenty of loss in the Bible. Everything from, the gospel starts with the idea that God loses his only son. Right. So, Bob, you got any thoughts on what the Bible says about loss? Is there anything that stands out to you scripturally that is interesting or useful?
Well, I think when you, like I was interested in what Lynley was sharing about when you're there, when somebody actually goes, and I've only been there with Christians when they've gone, but there's something that just happens, and a peace comes, and then they breathe their last. But there's no thought of anything except peace and that's goodbye. You know,
Wow.
that's the chapter. It's a very, very special moment to actually be a part of. And I think as far as scriptures go, you know, Paul said, absent from the body, present with the Lord. And even when you think of when Jesus went back to heaven, like he just rose up in a cloud. I mean, we don't know how far heaven is or what's the makeup. And, you know, but the Bible, you know, Jesus said, you know, God's a God of the living, not a God of the dead.
Yeah, wow,
And
great call.
so you think all of those things, I mean, the time we have here is something to be incredibly thankful for. And, but we don't have to fear, you know, the next step going from this life to something that's better.
It's not the whole show, is it?
No, not at all.
Yeah, this is the pre-show.
Yeah, it is.
That's great. Okay, so we've kind of dived a little bit into the death thing, but of course, loss is a whole lot more than just death. I've known people who've lost a business and found themselves grieving deeply. I remember when one of our first pets died, and watching the kids grapple with that was intriguing. Lynley, you spent quite a few years living in Indonesia. Some would say as a missionary. But you mentioned about how difficult it was coming home.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. What was the loss and was there grief in that?
Well, I was almost shocked by it, actually. I was quite surprised by my response. So we'd lived up in Indonesia for about 5.5 years in Sulawesi. I loved it there. When I got over there, there was something in me that I was like, I was born for this. So I loved my experience over there. Coming back to New Zealand, my husband and I, Malcolm and I, came back to New Zealand with our 3 young children. And so, we were Kiwis. It looked like we would fit in here and be kind of normal. But what I found was that I just found it so hard to adjust to living in New Zealand culture again, having had these experiences overseas. And it took me a whole year before I could come to a place where I could say, I think I might be able to live in New Zealand again. Wow. That was a whole year. And in that year, I remember I felt like so just out of place, so out of place all the time, and like lots of uncertainty. I felt really down a lot. I cried a lot, and I just remember thinking, what's going on with me? And then I actually realised one day, gosh, this almost feels like grief. And when I realised that, I was like, I probably, there's an element, this is huge change in my life, in our lives. There's probably an element of that in there.
Very good. Interesting you mentioned the word change. I remember Pastor Rick Warren made this fascinating comment on change. He says, when you bring change, for example, in a church setting, but it applies anywhere, he said very often you find people who appear to be oppositional to the change. But he said most of them are not oppositional. They're just grieving. And if you'll give them enough time, they will come through that in some way. Which I thought was a very insightful comment. So, okay, let's dig into the whole grief thing a little bit more then. And in a moment, Bob, I'd love to hear a bit about your journey with losing Maggie, who we all still miss today. But maybe we'll start, Lynley, could you talk to us about the stages of grief? It's tossed around, it's relatively well known. I know that grief is a particular area of interest for you in counselling. Talk to us about the stages of grief.
Yeah, so the stages of grief actually were discovered by a doctor, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and she noticed people who were dying that no one was really giving them the attention that she thought that they deserved. And so she started to study them, and she noticed that each person who had a terminal illness tended to go through these stages of what she calls grief, stages of grief. So
that's like denial, anger,
bargaining, depression and acceptance. Yep. But the world has kind of taken those stages for a person who's terminally ill, what they might experience, and we've said, everyone experiencing grief is going to go through this.
Okay.
Now, you may go through some of those stages, but you may not as well. And so sometimes that might be helpful to understand that, but sometimes it's not. Not all grief will look like that. And it sounds so nicely packaged that we go through this and then this and then this, but actually grief is just a big jumble.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And what I'm picking up is that actually it's more helpful to think of it as a jumble than 5 discrete stages we're going to move through nicely.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I think it's also just really important to remember that grief is a normal process
Brilliant.
of life. Like
God
actually,
designed, right?
I was going to say, you're designed to grieve. And most people will move through the process of grief and be okay. You will be okay. But yeah, there's a uniqueness to grief too.
Lovely.
The way in which each of us would grieve is slightly different. It's unique to each person. It's unique as my fingerprint is to me, as yours is to you. It's very unique.
Very good. Okay, so that sets a bit of the groundwork here. Bob, tell us about Maggie. Tell us about that journey.
Well, I should probably start with what happened with me first.
Great,
That
absolutely.
sort of led into what happened with Maggie.
Please do.
So 2 days before Christmas in 2020, I had a massive heart attack. And I found out afterwards they call it a widowmaker. And I woke up after the op and this specialist came in and said, "How's the luckiest man alive?" You know? And so it gave me a whole awareness of what I'd been through. But what I really remember and stuck in my mind was when they came to carry me out of the house, they were just sort of carrying me out, and I passed my grandkids were there. A couple of my grandkids were there because it was just a couple of days before Christmas.
Wow.
And this thought just hit me, like I don't even get a chance to say goodbye. And boy, that just walloped me in my thinking. And then when I recovered, and I was just so thankful. I mean, life took on another level of joy, and it was at Christmas time, and so it was all sort of special. And the recovery took a fair bit of time, but then after 12 months, Maggie was diagnosed with lung cancer. And at first they thought they could operate, and so that was pretty good, But I remember the first diagnosis we had, and we weren't sure what the reports would be like. We went, sat in the car, and I just said to her, "Look, we don't know what lies ahead. This looks like it's going to be okay. But whatever it is, we're not going to run from it. We're not going to deny it's happening. We're going to face this thing head on. And, with God, we're just actually going to embrace whatever comes. Wow. And we'll do it together. And that was, I think, really important. And then...
I just need to jump in there.
Yeah.
I do remember catching up with you and Maggie not long after you guys had made that decision, because we were chatting and I was saying, how you guys feeling? Like, what's this? And both of you were sitting there, you looked at each other, you looked at me and you said, "Mike, if God heals this, that's fine. And if this is what God's going to use to take Maggie home, that's fine as well. We're just going to trust him through it all." And I remember sitting there just really being in awe, I think, of the courage and the faith. It's easy for us to trust God in good stuff. Anyway, so I honour you for that, both of you.
It was just a huge privilege for me to think that I'd recovered so I could be there for it.
Wow.
Yes.
And so the journey ended up being 7 months, and we had a lovely home we were staying in. And all the family could come at different times. And so, it was a really, really special time. So we had lots of times to say goodbye, times to laugh, times to cry, family time. So that's really made the journey since she's gone a whole lot easier, because we had that compared to when I was carried out. And I thought, that's it.
Wow.
The difference was just huge.
Wow.
Oh, this is what I would like to say too about palliative nurses. Is that the right word? They are amazing. You know, they are special people.
100%.
Yeah.
And so shout out to not only all nurses, but all palliative care nurses.
Yeah, for sure.
100%. That's awesome. So, Bob, when you think back over the journey, what were some of the big moments? Obviously, it was a big moment sitting in the car and making the decision together.
Yeah.
We're going to go through whatever God brings.
Yeah.
What were some of the other big moments on that journey?
Well, they started off with thinking it was operable, and then you go through tests and find out it's not operable. And then she had to have an operation on her leg that was very painful. And so there was, you know, not comfortable hurdles to overcome on the way through. But we were just doing it together, and that, you know, that's what made it special. Whatever hurdles come, we were facing it. And in the end, she had to go into a home for some of the care, but then they set it up at our house as well. And
So Maggie passed at home.
yes, and I was with her when that happened. It was a couple of days after our wedding anniversary, so
How many years?
57.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Okay, so Bob, now obviously there was a lot of people involved in this. It wasn't just your grief, right? Maggie was grieving.
Yeah.
And then the kids were grieving.
Oh, yeah.
What can you tell us about Maggie's grief journey in that? What lessons would she want to pass on to us, do you think? And then what were some of the things you noticed in the kids' grief journeys? And obviously you don't necessarily have permission to speak on behalf of the kids, but what were some of the things that you noticed about the kids' grief journeys and about Maggie's grief journey that might be helpful for someone else?
Well, our children were in their 40s and 50s, so they're not young. But then there's the grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So there's quite a span of people. I think the great thing was, little things really stand. I remember one time she started to wear dark sunglasses. And
I remember.
The grandson said to her, "Nana, why are you wearing glasses inside for?" And she said, "Well, I'll tell you a secret." She said, "Sometimes people are talking to me and I just go to sleep, but they can't see that if I wear the glasses." So,
Wonderful.
it was just, just lifted the whole
Wonderful
atmosphere. The other thing that's sort of fascinating, and it still happens, is feathers keep popping up every now and then, which it's a bit weird, isn't it? It sounds a bit weird, but it just is. And feathers were sort of important in this, the 7 months, but they keep popping up at home. You find them on the floor. I mean, they're probably out of pillows and eider-downs, but there's none in the lounge, and suddenly, a feather will tune up there, and the kids find the same thing.
And what's the significance?
Well, it's just like it's her,
A little memory of her. It's a little mark of her.
Yeah. Or she's dropping something down on us.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
It's a little bit weird.
But it's also a little bit helpful, right?
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
It's a connection.
It's amazing. Yeah.
A connection.
Yeah. That's
I
great.
picked up on yesterday,
Well,
just, amazing.
And it made you think of Maggie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Every
wonderful.
time.
Lovely. That's awesome. Lynley, you counsel people through grief. What are some of the things that you see and notice, both good and challenging, that you see on people on the grief journey?
Challenging.
Like if people are coming for counselling, it's because they're struggling in some way, right? What do people need to hear? What do you think people need to know about grief?
Actually quite a few things, but I think something that somebody needs in grief is a lot of reassurance. And I say reassurance because grief has a way of crashing in on you that it's lonely, it's frightening, and it really questions like who you are now in the world. And so I'm now trying to adjust to the world in a different way, and that actually requires a lot of reassurance for people and encouragement, and just being with them, listening. What are the meanings that people are making from like feathers or things that are unique to that person's experience and journey, and understanding that.
Lovely. That's lovely. And so talk to us about hope. Hope is important, right? Because in grief, everything seems dark and hopeless, and yet it is still important to have hope in some way, right? You told me a really interesting story before about someone that you did some work with.
Yeah, sure, I can share that story. So this was a patient that I had looked after more than 20 years ago now. She had come into the hospital because she had had a significant mental health crisis. And so I looked after her for a few days. And then she returned to the hospital a few days later with a rose bush for me, actually, and it was called Spirit of Hope, which I thought was really beautiful. Now, that rose bush is...
So sorry, she brought this to you to say thank you, right?
Yeah, as a way of saying thank you.
So there's something about your care for her that got her through? That brought her hope?
Maybe, yeah, Great. Probably, I don't know. So I still have that rose bush in my garden now. I have moved Spirit of Hope from house to house with me. I have dug it up, uprooted it, and it has survived. It has survived through all the upheaval of from house to house. When the growing conditions were right or wrong, Spirit of Hope has survived. When we were living overseas, I couldn't take Spirit of Hope with me, so I gave it to my mother to look after for all those years. When you are in grief, you might not feel like, oh, where's hope there? I want to say, like, let people around you hold hope. Like, lean into them as they hold hope for you, because I'll guarantee there are people around you who are cheering for you, who are encouraging you on. Like lean into that.
Love it.
When I came back to New Zealand, I had the rose bush again, and it's in my garden. The thing with that patient, I still keep in contact with her. She has lived an amazing life. She's watched her children grow, her grandchildren grow, and I kind of think way back then she wouldn't have seen all these things that have happened since. But Hope knew, Hope waited with her.
Lovely.
Hope's not afraid of the dark spaces of our lives. In fact, it was made for those spaces.
Lovely. Lovely. Yeah, hope is such an intriguing thing, right? I remember Nigel Latta in one of his books talked about the work he had done with, kids that have been abused and some of those sorts of things. And he made the comment in one of those books that, when hope dies, now we're really in trouble. And I think how important that is for us. I love what you said about having people who can hold hope for you, even if you don't have hope in the midst of this. I think that's a cool concept and a great idea. And that, of course, leads us into the idea that we desperately need others in the grief journey, right? Yes. And I think this is one of the things that really stands out about you, Bob. Losing your wife, the one thing you didn't do, you didn't isolate yourself. I was talking with Lizzie about it, my wife, just yesterday, and she remembers very clearly how following Maggie's death, you spent a lot of time with the kids. Oh, yeah. You really leaned into those relationships.
It's so important. It's interesting you talked about the rose bush, called Hope, and Maggie used to love hydrangeas. And anyway, I thought, so I went and looked for one. And there was one which was a bright sort of dark purple, sort of royal colours, and it was called Bloody Marvellous. And I was like, well, we got to get this one. So we planted that, and the kids often come over, go down the beach, they'll bring back shells, and they've painted stones and just, place them. And they still do that, when they come over and again. So the memory's still alive.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that that we learn in counselling is what is called Warden's tasks of mourning, and the 4 tasks of mourning. And I know we have issue with the word task. It's not really a task, but it's certainly there's some useful things there, right? Like acceptance of the loss, processing of the pain, adjusting to the world without what it is you've lost. But the fourth one is interesting because it talks about the importance of establishing an enduring connection in some way with what has been lost. And that's exactly what you're talking about there, Bob.
Yeah.
This hydrangea with the wonderful name, but it's the place where the kids can come.
Yeah.
It's a point of remembering again, without pain, but with joy,
Yes.
and a way to do something that enables them to continue that processing. Lynley, we've talked about grief. How long should grief take?
How long's a piece of string?
Great.
This is the uniqueness of grief. Everyone's different. We would say up to a year, 2 years is still really early stages of grief.
Wow.
And I think sometimes, like maybe after 6 months or something, I might hear someone come in and say, I thought I'd be further along than I am now. And you can almost hear this judgment of themselves and where they should be in it, which I think is really unhelpful sometimes, that we judge ourselves or we judge other people's grief on where we think they should and shouldn't be. And I just think that let's make space for people and what they are going through and have compassion for that, because the word bereavement actually means to be torn apart.
Wow.
If you don't know what that feels like, then you might not have the compassion for it. But to make space for people's grief and loss. And so a year, 2 years is still considered really early stages of grief.
Wow. So this is not there's no easy quick fix. There's no simple 1, 2, 3.
No.
Let's work our way through these things. And yet, like you said earlier, grief is a natural process. It's created by God. It's designed to bring healing when there has been significant loss. And of course, there is life after loss. Bob, tell us a bit about what life has been like after losing your amazing life partner. And, I'm sure you think about her very often, but I have also watched you. You have not shrunk back. You've not hidden away. You have kept on living in a very positive and proactive way. Tell us what that's been like for you.
I wouldn't like to cut myself off. I think that would be a really bad mistake. I think things that have helped me a lot have been like grief or feelings of grief, whatever, they just come at different times.
Yes.
And it can happen any time out of the blue. Things I found helpful is sometimes I could just go on YouTube and play songs we used to like.
Lovely.
And cry.
Lovely.
And just have a good ball, let it out. That doesn't happen so much now, but I still do the music every now and then. And it surprised me with our kids. I suppose it shouldn't. Just the deepness of the grief at times. When it's around to the anniversary or her birthday, then, I'll often get messages or we'll get together. And so it's great that we keep it alive. When I really miss her the most, I think, is like if I'm travelling somewhere and you're doing it on your own, it's, you might have heaps of people around you and it just ain't the same.
Yeah.
And just different moments.
But it hasn't stopped you from travelling.
Oh, no. No, you've got to keep living.
Yeah.
I mean, life's for living, and you've got, I think one of the great things for a Christian should know about thankfulness, every day. And I think I can't remember when I've not been thankful, for the day that's ahead of us. It's always going to be a great day. And days are still great.
Love
and
that,
and the memories, the pain, when that happens, that's healthy.
Yeah,
that's a
I love
good
that.
thing.
Yes.
Wow. That's awesome. Lynley, what's your advice to someone who has lost something or someone and is grieving but they're finding it hard and it feels like it's taking too long and they're losing hope? What's your advice? What should their go-tos be?
Well, ultimately, if you feel that you are in that state, then reach out to us for counselling.
Right.
Like who can you invite into your world? Just one person that I might be able to say to, hey, actually, this is where I'm really at, and being honest about that. And that's a hard thing to open up to do that, but just reaching out to someone. Grief wants you to turn in. The challenge is to turn out again.
Love that.
And I'd also say just going really gently with yourself. Grief has a way of just slowing it slows life down, and it actually forces you to slow down, to wait, to linger. Life is so busy and rushed, and we're not so great at slowing down and waiting. But it will force you to do that. And so in that waiting, just going gently with yourself.
Wonderful.
And that's going to be different. Like Bob's talked about things that he did that were helpful for him, and that might be different for each person. But a couple of things I'd just say there is movement, just going out for a walk, like actually moving with the grief through it. Notice the trees, notice the leaves, hear it, come back inside, and you might go back into that grief again. Even at the end of the day, just naming 2 or 3 things that I've done today, that I've actually done today. It might have been, well, I got out of bed, I went for a walk, and I sat down and, I don't know, looked out the window for a while. Just naming something, because I say that because grief, it will knock your confidence in your ability to be in the world sometimes. And so being able to say, hey, I did this today. So when you're having a day where you're like, oh, I don't feel like getting out of bed, you can actually remember, well, I do know how to get out of bed. And if I'm in bed today, that's all right today, but I know I can get out again tomorrow.
That really reminds me of something that we've talked about before, which is this particular model called the dual process model of grief, which I particularly like, and it talks about how grieving is in some way this movement between kind of loss-orientated activities, feeling sad, crying, sitting in bed, listening to YouTube, whatever it is, I just can't get up today, and giving yourself permission to have those days. That's okay. But also recognizing at some point there also has to be the movement towards restoration-oriented activities. Get yourself out of bed, go for a walk, write something in your journal, go do some shopping. And actually it's in the movement back and forward between those two. Both of them are really healthy. And to give yourself permission to some days go to the movies and not feel guilty. Sometimes there's a lot of guilt with grief, isn't there? Which is the strangest thing. Yes. But the movement between those two, they say that healing occurs as you move between those two. And so to allow yourself for as long as it takes, but just to not allow yourself to get stuck in one or other of those as you go on.
Yeah.
Bob, what are you looking forward to?
What am I looking forward to?
What are you looking forward to?
Well,
you're going to Noosa in a couple of days.
Yeah, going to Noosa.
With the kids.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's good things happening, don't worry.
Yeah,
there's lots of them, yeah.
That's great, eh?
Yeah.
And Lynley, grief is a particular passion of yours.
Yeah.
Can you tell us why that is?
I wish I could say it in one sentence, but I don't think I can. It's something that has been shaped in me over the years, and I've just noticed I have a particular love and compassion for people who are grieving. And maybe that's something to do in and around because I feel God's heart for them. I don't know, but it's really my passion, actually. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think it's interesting that we've talked a number of times about how grief is God designed, which tells us that God is in grief and with us in our grief.
Yeah.
And, we have Lamentations in the Bible, really a book of grieving, right, in lots of ways.
Yeah.
And I think that's very good for us to realise that in our theology, we also, not only should we have a theology of suffering, because that is a part of life, but we also must have a theology of grieving, right?
Yes, yeah.
We've got to realise God is in that and with that, and that is awesome. Well, I think that we have covered a huge amount of ground today, and that's probably all we've got time for. But can I just say thank you to you two for sharing your stories, your insights, bringing so much hope and constructive conversation to this very difficult topic. It is awesome. We believe God wants you to live well. And so we encourage you to listen to the other podcasts that are available as well. It has been a privilege. We want to say thanks to Elim Christian Centre and the amazing team who are around me right now, helping pull all this together. They're a bunch of rock stars. It has been awesome. Live well. We'll see you on Sunday.
Thank you for joining us today. If this has raised anything for you that you feel like you need some immediate support, then you can ring counselling at 1737, or you can also text them. Or possibly you'll want to talk to your local pastor. If you're part of Elim Christian Centre community, then you can get some free counselling on counselling at elimchristiancentre.org.nz. Thanks for listening.